Guys could see me and hear me? You could see me and hear me? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Give me now. Give me. Make my volume louder so I can hear you. You're muted, I think. I don't hear you. Before I heard you, now I don't hear you. I don't hear you guys.
Okay, I just unmuted you.
Now I hear you.
You hear me? Do you hear me, Rabbi Jacobson?
Now I do. Before everybody.
Okay, Aaron, are you unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
But it's not coming through the TV. It's just coming through the laptop now.
Say again?
It's just coming through the laptop.
You don't
now.
hear it up there?
Correct. That's what happened. When you plugged in the mic before did this. I did. It didn't work.
Let go, let go, let go, let go.
So you want to do select audio. Oh, wait a minute. There you go. Do that. Yep. Next.
Okay, Rabbi Jacobson, can you talk now just to hear the sound?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Happy birthday.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, both those who are here with us at our watch party, as well as those who are on the Zoom from your homes. I know today was a wicked, as we say here in Massachusetts, a wicked storm, and some of you wanted to stay home, and I don't blame you. We're really excited tonight to have a very special lecture with Rabbi Jacobson in honor and sponsored in honor of our dear Bracha Gilmeister, whose 70th birthday is tonight on the 15th day of Elul, which is special in many, many ways. And as our sages say, Megalgul and Schus Liyom Zakai, that things of merit always fall on the same day. So being that today is a special day with the establishment of the yeshiva, the Chabad yeshiva, as we talked about on Shabbos, it's extra special that it's Bracha's birthday. And we have with us, to speak for us, Rabbi Jacobson, known as Rabbi YY, who was born and bred in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. We spent this time as a child and then as a bacher. You guys know what a bacher is, right? Studying from and with the Rebbe. In 1988, at the age of 15, a young, at that time, Yossi Jacobson began serving on a small team of oral scribes, aka human tape recorders. They were given the charge to memorize and transcribe all of the Rebbe's Fabrengens, Rebbe's talks, which were done on Shabbos and Yom Tov. There was no recordings, obviously. So they were able to record them in their brains, and then as human tape recorders, they transcribed it after the holiday was over, or Shabbos was over. And these Fabrengens went from a minimum of about 3 hours to sometimes over 7 hours. And they would, on Saturday night or on Motzei, the end of the holiday, transcribe those Fabrengens. I've known Rabbi Jacobson from my days in yeshiva. While he was a grade older than me, he studied in the same base medrash, in the same zal, the same study hall as I did. Not in my league, but nonetheless in the same study hall. Today, Rabbi Jacobson is one of America's premier Jewish speakers and leaders. He's the most sought after speaker in the Jewish world today, but also in the non-Jewish world. And he represents a voice for truth and compassion. Over the last 20 years, Rabbi Jacobson traveled to hundreds of communities, schools, universities, and synagogues across the globe, educating and inspiring people of all backgrounds with the majestic depth of Torah and Judaism through the lens of the Rebbe and Hasidus. And tonight, we're lucky that he's here to speak for us. And at the end of the talk, Rabbi Jacobson will take questions on the topic of his speech, or maybe any topic. So without further ado, because he didn't come to hear me tonight, I introduce to you Rabbi YY Jacobson.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my dear friend, Rabbi Kievman. And thank you to the rabbi and the rabbi's wife, who I learned today is my cousin. I did not know that before. For this special invitation. Just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me in the room where you're gathered. And on Zoom? Wow. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Gam Zoom Lataiva. So thank you to Rabbi and Rebbitzin, Rabbi and Mrs. Kievman, for giving me this special opportunity and privilege and inviting me to come address the great community of Chabad of Milford. It's really a thrilling privilege to be here with all of you who are gathered for this special evening. I know you guys have been having fun for hours. I hope you leave a little sushi for us outsiders, and maybe you could Zoom the sushi over or whatever you had there. I don't know. Chinese, okay, and a little French food in honor of the Rebbitzin. Or that was the wine. Okay, so those of you who are gathered physically together, and those of you who are with me in the Zoom in the Zoom department, but welcome to all of you, and really thank you so much for this opportunity. A very, very special Mazel Tov and blessings of congratulations to our dear friend, Bracha Gilmeister, on this great, great milestone in honor of your 70th birthday. Mazel Tov, happy birthday to you. And thank you so much for bringing us together in honor of your birthday. Thank you, Bracha, for being such a bracha, which of course is the Hebrew word for blessing, for the lives not only of your life and your loved ones, but the impact you made and you continue to make on so many friends, colleagues, the entire community, and so many people in the Jewish and non-Jewish world. I have the privilege that Bracha is a very dear student of many of my classes on the yeshiva.net. So it's really a privilege for me to be able to participate in your birthday celebration, birthday party. I hope you'll be able to Zoom over a piece of the birthday cake as well, even though my wife would prefer if I don't partake in a birthday cake that has more than 0 calories in it. So I'll do the birthday cake in a cup of water. But it's really a pleasure to be here and to honor your birthday and to honor all of the amazing work that you have done, especially in the field of recovery, especially to help people who are in crisis, who have trauma. And there's only 3.5 people on the planet that I know that don't have trauma. So that's most of us. To really be able to transform our pain into a source of awareness, be able to transform our challenges into a catalyst for growth. Some of you may know about the house that Bracha founded, the Gili House, which is really dedicated as a sober home for many, many people who have began their journey from darkness to light, from the abyss into a life of transformation, in the loving memory of her beloved son of blessed memory. So on this great day of your 70th birthday, I join all of your friends, all of your family members, all of your fans, all of your admirers, and wishing you many, many, many more happy, healthy, prosperous years. May you go from strength to strength and continue to serve as a divine ambassador for love and light and hope and healing and authenticity and wisdom and redemption. May God give you the strength to be able to transform your and our pain into growth and light and redemptive, expansive consciousness. And may the accomplishments of your next 70 years be so powerful and many that they will eclipse all of the extraordinary accomplishments of your first 70 years. And to do it with good spirits and with great health and with great joy and prosperity, together with all of your loved ones. And as we say in Hebrew, la'arichut yamim v'shanim tovot, for many, many long, happy and healthy years. Happy birthday, mazel tov, and congratulations. And thank you very much. So, they tell the story. It's a little anecdote. I like to make it personal. You know, a woman once comes over to me and says, Rabbi Jacobson, I'm looking for the perfect husband. You find me the perfect husband to marry. Like, it would be my pleasure to. But you have to define for me first, what's the definition of a perfect husband? You know, one woman's perfection is another woman's nightmare. One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. So when you tell me you're looking for the perfect husband, you first have to give me a clue. What does this perfect husband look like? So she tells me, Rabbi YY, for me, the perfect man is the man who wakes up every single morning, 5 o'clock, no later than 5 o'clock, number one. Number two, he makes his own bed. Number three, he prepares his own breakfast and his own lunch and his own dinner. He also spends minimum an hour and a half a day in the gym working out. In addition to that, he loves going to the library. He could sit every day and he reads. In addition to that, he does not rely on me to clean his room, to make a meal. He's responsible for himself. In addition to that, she tells me, I'm looking for a man who's predictable. I always know where he is. He also doesn't go on ski trips. He doesn't go on these men's trips. He doesn't join the Kiddush club. In addition to all of this, he's a man who's in bed every night no later than 9:15 p.m. That's for me the perfect husband. And he's also a man who never consumes any alcohol. Rabbi Jacobson, do you know if there's such a man anywhere, and where can I find him? And I told her, yes, in prison. So we all understand that sometimes, you know, perfection, too much perfection is a sign that we're very inhibited. People are people. We grow, we learn from mistakes. Spontaneity is part of the human process. They tell an old joke about, it's not so old, a couple of years old, about this teenager whose great uncle died. So he had to go to the funeral begrudgingly. His mother said, you have to go to the funeral. So he goes to the cemetery to attend the funeral. And he's sitting in the front seat. The rabbi gets up to officiate and to give the eulogy for this elderly man who passed away. The teenager is sitting in the front row. He turns to the rabbi in the cemetery. He says, Rabbi, you probably officiate a lot of funerals. Could you tell me before you begin, I know it's going to be a long afternoon here. I know you're going to be giving a long, boring, monotonous sermon. Rabbi, before you begin, could you tell me what's the Wi-Fi code here in the cemetery? The rabbi lost it. You know, sometimes you're triggered and you lost it. And the rabbi screams out, respect for the dead. The young man looks at him and says, Rabbi, that's great. Is all this in capital? He was certain the rabbi is screaming, respect for the dead, loud. It must be not lowercase, but capital. Respect for the dead. That's why he's screaming. which of course demonstrates the truth that sometimes people live in such different worlds, they don't even understand each other. There was a woman who was coming out of her Beverly Hills $19 million mansion, and a homeless man comes over to her and says, ma'am, please give me something. I haven't eaten in 3 days. And she looks at him and she says, wow, I'm jealous of you. I wish I would have willpower like you. So sometimes people really live in a different world. They simply live in a different wavelength. They don't understand what you're telling them. I say this all as an introduction to really appreciate what is going on now in so many of our lives. You know, we titled this evening 2020 Vision for the world of 2021. And that's so important, to be able to develop vision, especially in the Jewish calendar. You all know this is the last month of the year. It's a month when we take stock, when we become a little more introspective, and we prepare to welcome a new year, which we call Rosh Hashanah. So it's really a time to gain perspective, to cultivate perspective, to develop vision, 2020 vision for a 2021 world. What type of vision would Judaism ask of us to develop at such a time? And I would say there is one major point that I think we can all focus on. And that is, we don't know the reason for tragedies. This is something that belongs to the realm of God. The human brain has no way of understanding infinity. The human brain is finite, it's limited. It has no way of grasping the depth of the infinite mind of God. So when somebody says they understand the reason for tragedies, it's ludicrous. Unless I'm a prophet, and I'm not, how could anybody know the reason? And that's why we don't give reasons, but we always learn lessons. Maimonides writes that whenever we see an event, we have to learn a lesson. We have to become better people. We need to grow. We can't always understand why. And sometimes the question of why is so futile because it just entangles us in an intellectual, mathematical mess that we can't get out of. Because every answer has another question. The Baal Shem Tov said, for every question, I have an answer, and for every answer, I have a question. And that's the truth of life, because wisdom is infinite and God is infinite. So everything just brings us to the next level. And once you peel that layer of the onion, there's another layer and another layer and another layer. And part of life is to be comfortable in the awe and the mystery of life, in the journey, to be able to appreciate silence, to be able to appreciate that the questions are as deep as the answers, and that every answer brings another question, and every question brings another answer, that answer brings another question. So we don't explain tragedies, but we always learn from them. We're still under the impression of a world that's been very, very deeply affected in recent times, and particularly the Jewish world, in so many different ways, including what happened in Surfside, what happened in Iran, what happened in Karlin. Similar events in the sense that people who did not suspect such catastrophe went to sleep peacefully in their beautiful condominiums on the beach in Florida, in Surfside, Florida. And then suddenly their lives were just taken. And for me, what that represents is that sometimes from the outside, something could look so good and so beautiful. But on the inside, it's rotten. On the inside, it's decomposed. On the inside, it's really a house of cards. You sometimes look at a situation, and at the surface, everything is perfect. It's picture perfect, impeccable, flawless. But on the inside, it's crumbling. And sooner or later, that's going to come out. And it's so painful to watch because the thing looks so nice on the outside, but it's all superficial. It's skin deep. And the moment you go a little deeper, you see that there's really nothing there. There's no substance. It was just a few weeks ago when Simone Biles withdrew from the Olympics, the Tokyo, Japan Olympics of 2021. The world was shocked. Simone Biles was considered the greatest female gymnast in history. The greatest. Her vaults, her skills were astounding, shocking. And then one day, the end of July, just a few weeks ago, she suddenly withdrew from the Olympics. And the world was stunned. And I watched one interview that she had with a reporter. And the reporter was challenging her. The reporter was saying, don't you think it's immature? It's babyish. It's fearful. You don't just withdraw, throw your team under the bus. You worked so hard for this moment. And she looked him in the eyes and she said something so important. Simone said these words, "You people don't realize that we are not just entertainers. We athletes are not just here to entertain the world. We have minds, we have hearts, we have souls, we have inner emotions that you don't know about. And those have to come first." She was taken aback, but it was a very meaningful comment because what it was saying is, don't sacrifice the external for the internal. Sometimes you could become so focused on everything looking good, looking perfect, so that everybody likes what it looks like. But inside, I'm miserable. Inside, I'm filled with so much trauma and pain and agony and suffering. So she said, remember that we have an inside, we have a soul. We're not just robots. We're not just a machine to entertain you. We're not just perfect people. We have a lot of deep emotions. And to put it in the context, I said it earlier, sometimes you look at something and on the outside it looks perfect. But if you don't know what's going on the inside, it can all just come crumbling down. And when structures crumble one after another, it challenges each and every one of us to ask ourselves, what do our structures look like? The structures that you and I built in our lives, what do they look like? Not just on the outside, but also on the inside. You remember, maybe there was a French naturalist. His name was Henry Faber. Henry Faber. He won the Nobel Prize in the early 1900s because of his research. And one of the fascinating pieces of research he did was on processionary caterpillars. Processionary caterpillars, I don't know if you ever studied caterpillars for too long, but they follow in a procession. You can sometimes see 300 caterpillars following each other like a choo-choo train, head to toe, head to foot. The head of one caterpillar is etched against the legs of the caterpillar in front of it. And so they go in this choo-choo train circle, choo-choo train path. The one on the front is always searching for food. And that's why they're called in English processionary caterpillars. Henry Faber, this French scientist, wanted to find out how deeply embedded in the caterpillars is the gene to follow each other. So what did he do? He took a group of these caterpillars. He took a flower pot. He turned it over on its head. And on the rim of the flower pot, he placed these processionary caterpillars, which were now following each other in a circle. So they weren't getting anywhere because they weren't going on a straight line. They were just following the rim of the flower pot, like this, like this, like this. In the middle of the flower pot, he put food. He wanted to see which caterpillar would part ways from the group the first in order to get the food. Because they're all following each other. So who's going to part ways? Somebody's going to have to tear themselves away from the circle to get the food. You know what the end of the research was? You won't believe this. He watched them for 7 days and 7 nights. Every caterpillar till the last one died from exhaustion starvation and dehydration, because nobody would tear itself away from the circle in order to go get the food in the middle of the flower pot, which was only a few yards, a few feet. Imagine. In other words, the instinct to follow the others was so powerfully embedded in the caterpillar that they ultimately sacrificed their lives not to leave the circle. And I thought to myself, OMG, oh my God, isn't this the story of so many of our lives? I sometimes end up in a circle and I'm just following the circle. I'm doing what other people do. I want to be part of that procession. I don't want to make waves. I don't want to be independent. I don't want to be loyal to myself. I don't want to be authentic to myself. So I just want that you should be able to say about me, I'm part of the circle. And even if that means that I'm starving, I'm dehydrated, I'm thirsty, I'm longing, I'm dying inside, I got to stay in the circle. I got to put up the show. I got to continue doing what I always been doing. They once asked a 106-year-old woman, what's the advantage of living to the age of 106? And she said, no peer pressure. Sometimes I will sacrifice my soul, my priorities, my mind, my neshama, my God. Why? Because I need to be in the circle. Comes life and tells us, don't make that mistake. You have to know where your food is. You have to know where your source of sustenance is. You have to know where your source of inspiration is. And when you do, have the courage to go out of the circle and do things differently than you did them yesterday. Have the courage to make decisions that may be dramatically different than my decisions that I made last year. Have the courage to go out of that predictable trajectory and go obtain that which will feed your mind, feed your soul, feed your body. Don't allow externalities to triumph and eclipse what your neshama, what your inner consciousness really, really needs. Because that game doesn't benefit us. And this, my dearest friends, is one of the greatest secrets of the holiday that we're soon going to celebrate together as Jews all over the world, including in Milford, of course, called Rosh Hashanah. It's a strange mitzvah. We blow the ram's horn. Why do you blow the ram's horn? If we want music, let's get a violin. Let's get a cello. Let's get a guitar. Let's get a piano. If we want the person to cry out, why do you need a ram's horn? Just cry out. What's the idea of this shofar, this ram's horn that we blow on Rosh Hashanah? Toot, 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 toot. What's the idea of it? And believe me, the ram's horn doesn't produce the most beautiful music in the world. That's not its job. In fact, I want to tell you something. 500 years ago, when the Jews were in Spain, this was a time of the Inquisition, and many Jews did not leave Spain. They remained what they called Marranos. They converted to Christianity in order to be able to remain in Spain in the 15th century. But secretly, they lived as Jews. If they were caught, they could be burnt at the stake. Many were. And there were Jewish Marranos who led the symphony in Spain, and it was Rosh Hashanah. And all the Jews came to the symphony. In the middle, they had somebody blow the shofar. On Rosh Hashanah, in the middle of the symphony, as one of the musical instruments, nobody realized, so that the Jews can hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Imagine the depth of sacrifice they were ready to undertake in order to hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Why is it such a powerful mitzvah? What's the significance of it? And one of the answers to that is, the shofar represents our primal voice, our innermost voice, that which we can't articulate consciously. You know, every person has different voices. There are the voices I can articulate consciously. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. But then there are the voices that are so deep inside me. They are etched in my subconscious. I usually can't articulate them in words, but I can articulate them through tears. I can't speak about them, but I can cry about them. You all know that sometimes you have such deep visceral reactions and emotions. You can't talk about it, but you feel it. And sometimes we have such deep feelings that we can't even articulate them in tears. We don't have a way of articulating them. They're beyond awareness. And that's when we take the animal instrument. We take a ram's horn called a shofar and we blow. That captures our most primal self, our most primal voices that lay deep, deep, deep inside of us and usually don't have a voice. And with our own voice, we would never be able to capture it. So we take an animal instrument. We take the horn of a ram. That's what a shofar is. And we blow into it, representing the fact that we're using the animal to get in touch with our most primal self. Because Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, God asks of you and of me, he says, don't be afraid to go inside the building. Let's not focus on the external building. Go into your deepest, deepest core and find your deepest, deepest voice. Do you even know what that voice looks like? Do you know what is the pain that sits in the essence of your soul? Do you know what are the longings and yearnings and desires that you never articulated? Maybe you never had the language. Maybe I never had the ability to go there. What's happening today everywhere in the world is so much pain and trauma and anxiety is coming out. So Rosh Hashanah says, don't be afraid. That's the shofar. That's exactly the sound we want to hear. I don't want to hear a nice musical concerto. Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da. Not that I don't love Beethoven's Ninth and Beethoven's Fifth. Not that I don't love a beautiful piece of Tchaikovsky or Bach or Mozart. But that's not the function of Rosh Hashanah. Function of Rosh Hashanah is not even that I just cry with my own sobs. It's to be able to bring to light my deepest primal voices that usually I don't have access to. But on Rosh Hashanah, I have access to them. And here we come to yet another major idea about the Rosh Hashanah shofar. And tune in. What is a shofar? What is a ram's horn? You know what? I always like to be visual. So give me a split second. Let me go get my shofar so I could visualize what I'm saying. Give me a half a second. Right? I have here two shofars. One is the one that the Yemenite Jews use. You see? Here is a little tiny cute one. Both ram's horns. But I'm not here to give you migraine headaches at the moment. We came for a birthday party, not for you to hear my display of shofar blowing. What's the idea behind this? Like, what's this idea? And you know, this is one of the biggest mitzvot in the Jewish calendar. On Rosh Hashanah, every Jew listens to shofar. Why? So we explained one thing about the primal voice, but I want to now share something else, a very deep idea from Kabbalah. You see, when I blow, Look what's happening. By the way, you need somebody to blow in Milford. You want to hire me? I'm blowing. But if I would go like this, you don't hear anything. Because I use the shofar, my sound, my ear, the ear that comes out of my mouth, the breath, goes into the horn, goes into the shofar, and it travels through, and it comes out on the other side, and it has a beautiful sound. What's the idea of this? The beginning of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, commemorates the anniversary of the creation of the world and of the creation of Adam and Eve. The Bible says in Genesis that God blew into Adam a soul of life. He blew into the nostrils of Adam a breath of life, a soul of life. So every Rosh Hashanah, God once again exhales and blows, so to speak, infusing the world and the humanity with God's energy, with the divine DNA. So we too commemorate that by blowing the shofar, because really, what is a person? How do I deal with my pain? How do I deal with my trauma? How do I deal with the part of the building that doesn't look good, but the part of the building that seems to be crumbling? How do I deal with it? And the answer is, I always have to remember, I am a shofar. You see, each and every single one of us is a channel, a conduit. For what? For God's energy. Every moment, God's energy is flowing through you, flowing through me. So who are you? You're like a musical instrument. You're a shofar. How do I allow the sound to flow through me if my shofar is empty? There's no blockages. Look at this now. You know why? You don't hear anything because I'm blocking it. I'm blocking it. There's a blockage. And what happens if there's a blockage in the middle of the shofar? The voice will not come out. That's what happens in life. God's energy is flowing through us. What's our job at every moment? To be an open conduit, to be an open channel, to let the music go through you. And then it's amazing. Then you are a channel for infinity at every single moment of your life. This is what it sounds like. Okay, could have been better, but you get the point. But if I have blockages, what does trauma do? What trauma does is it blocks. So now I can't be a channel anymore. The music gets stuck inside of me. Now, what does that mean practically? Every morning when I wake up, the first thing we do as Jews, first thing we do when we open our eyes is we say a special short meditation. Moda ani lefanecha. Thank you, Eternal King, for giving me back my soul, for allowing me to become a conduit for your energy today. I wake up and I tell myself, today I want to be a conduit. Today I want to be a channel for the love, for the light, for the music to flow through me. Whoever I meet, my spouse, my children, my grandchildren, my loved ones, my siblings, strangers, acquaintances, people I work with, people I meet randomly, friends. I want to be a channel, an open and empty channel for infinity to flow through me. But often in life, we develop blockages. Anger is a blockage. Depression is a blockage. Guilt is a blockage. Shame is a blockage. Hatred is a blockage. Animosity is a blockage. Manipulation is a blockage. Deception is a blockage. I become blocked inside myself, and I'm not there anymore. That's what tshuva means. Tshuva in Hebrew is repentance. It means removing blockages. Every day I want to remove more and more blockages so I could become a shofar. I could become an open, empty channel for the divine love, for the divine music, for the divine hope to flow through me. And you know, that's why the mitzvah of shofar is so powerful. That's why I encourage all of you that as Rosh Hashanah is coming, just in 2 weeks, Tuesday, a little more than 2 weeks, Tuesday morning, to be able to do whatever you can, to go to the synagogue, even for a little while, simply to be able to participate in the mitzvah of hearing the sound of the shofar, because it opens channels in heaven. It also opens channels in our souls. And to be able to reflect on this truth, that this coming year, what we want to focus on is rebuilding our inner structures, not just our outer structures. The outer structures have been crumbling to remind everybody that we need inner structures. And the crumbling of the outer structures happen on 3 levels, 3 different levels. Level number 1, it happens within myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm living this fake life. I'm just saying what other people want me to say. I'm just not a real person. I need to reinvent myself. That's number 1. Number 2, our families. People's relationships crumble. They don't have deep relationships. Why? Again, because I'm not connected to my inner soul, to my inner music. And 3, collectively in the world, we allow politics or disagreements to tear us apart. Again, we focus on the external and we lose sight of the internal. To be able to really connect to each other on a much deeper, more authentic level. So when structures crumble in life and in the world, it's not a reason to despair. It's a reason to go deeper, to go into our primal voice, to our primal childhood, to our primal essence, to be able to reinvent ourselves from the beginning. It's not easy. It's easier to cover things up, to make believe everything is good, but that's not what we're capable of. We're capable of much more. We're capable of becoming a shofar. I want to be a channel. I want to be a conduit. I don't want my ego to obstruct God's music flowing through me. I want my ego to be able to be channeled as a conduit for infinity. That's what a healthy ego means. A healthy ego means an ego that doesn't obstruct the music of life, an ego that channels the music of life. The acronym for ego is easing God out. That type of ego obstructs the music. You want a sense of self, which you become a channel. How do I know that? How do I know the difference? If I find myself being humble, being vulnerable, being real, being authentic, connecting more to myself, to others, then I know that I'm being a channel. When I find myself in a place of serenity, tranquility, focus, resilience, confidence, joy, I'm being a channel for the divine. They tell an old anecdote about the Titanic. Now, Titanic was no joke, but this is an old joke that they say about the Titanic. This was this guy sitting on the deck of the Titanic, first class, a wealthy man traveling on the Titanic, and he's sitting on the deck, and he calls over one of the waiters, and he says, you know, I would like a cup of beer with ice. Okay. A few minutes later, of course, the boat, the Titanic, hits the iceberg and it cuts through the boat. And of course, everything changes. And the joke goes that this man turned to the waiter and he said, you know, I asked for ice, but not so much ice. So in life, sometimes, you know, people ask for ice, not for an iceberg. What happens now in the world is people ask for ice and they're seeing an iceberg. And when such moments come to play, what do we hold on to? What do we hold on to? They tell a story about Pavarotti. Pavarotti once did a rendition of Psalm chapter 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Beautiful rendition. When he finished the rendition, he got a standing ovation. And then an old Jewish woman gets up and says, Mr. Pavarotti, do you mind if I do my rendition of Psalm 23? He said, sure. And this old Jewish woman begins to sing, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. There was one problem. She couldn't carry a tune to save her life, nor did she even know the words well. But you know what? She put her heart into it, and people were crying. And when she finished reading the psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, Pavarotti turns to her and says, ma'am, I don't understand this. I did an impeccable job in reciting this psalm, but nobody shed a tear. People gave me an applause, but nobody cried. You failed miserably. You violated every law of singing. And everybody was crying. Why? And she looked at him and she said, Mr. Pavarotti, you may know the psalm, but I know the shepherd. And that makes all the difference in life. Do you know the psalm or do you know the shepherd? Or as Oscar Wilde said, some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Or as Professor Heschel said, today people are reading more and more about less and less. It is so important to not only know the psalm, but to be able to know the shepherd and to have a relationship with the shepherd. It's not about knowing more data and knowing more information. It's about having an inner connection with something that cannot be destroyed, with something that could never be obliterated, with something that could never be taken away. It's about having a deep, deep relationship with myself. There was an old Hasidic Jew I knew. He was in Stalin's gulag in Siberia for 10 years. 10 years. He was exiled to Siberia because he helped Jews escape the communist regime after the Holocaust. His name was Reb Mendel Futefas. And he told the boys once, an amazing story. He said one of the sins in the barracks where you were not allowed to play cards. In the barrack, you were not allowed to play cards. It was a big sin. But the prisoners didn't have what to do. So after lights out, they would take out the cards. They would start playing. But once in a while, there would be an inspection. So the cards had to be hidden very, very well. So Reb Mendel says, I'm sitting in the barrack one night, and my comrades, my colleagues in the Siberian prison are playing cards illegally. Suddenly, we hear the footsteps of the guard coming. Within 2 seconds, they had the cards put together and given to the head guy who was in charge. And the door bursts open. And the warden says, I'm here to make an inspection. I know you're playing cards. And he starts searching. And he has everybody empty out their pockets. And he looks in everybody's bed and cubby. And he can't find the cards. And Reb Mendel, the Hasidic Jew, is saying, how do these guys do it? How do these Russian peasants do it? And the guy is searching and searching and searching, and he can't find it. And he leaves the cell frustrated. And the moment he leaves and the door is locked, the cards come out again and they continue playing. And I turned to the chief gangster there, And I tell him, you gotta tell me the secret. He says, I'll tell you the secret, Jew. But if you tell anybody, I will physically kill you. He says, you know you can trust me. And you know what he said to him? He said, when the guard comes in, we take all the cards and we put it into his own pocket. We have a professional pickpocketer. He knows how to put things in a pocket and take things out without anybody noticing. So we take all the cards and we put it in the pocket of the inspector. He checks everywhere. The only place he doesn't check is his own pockets. He never finds it. And then right before he leaves, we take it out and we continue the game. And Reb Mendel, this great Hasidic Jew, looked at us and he said, boys, this is the story of life. Everybody looks in everybody else's pockets. Nobody goes back to their own pocket. I look for happiness inside of you. I blame my problems on you. I get angry because of you. I get jealous because of you. I'm frustrated because of you. He says, the cards are in your own pocket. Go check your own pockets. Stop checking everybody else's pockets. The source of joy lay in my pocket. The source of faith lay in my pocket. The source of resilience lay in my pocket. The source of confidence lay in my pocket. I'm not a mistake. I'm not a random mutation. Rosh Hashanah teaches the person that birth is God saying you matter. And the day you were born is the day that God said that the world is an incomplete place without you. That's what birth means in Judaism. That's why we celebrate birthdays. That's why we're celebrating Bracha's birthday. Because the day you were born, Bracha, and the day each of you were born, is the day that God declared that the world is incomplete without you. That there's something in your life that doesn't exist in any other life. That you have a contribution to make to this world that nobody before you and nobody after you will be able to make. Not because there were no great people and there will not be great people, but there is something uniquely cherished. There's something that we uniquely cherish about your individual self, because there's no two people alike, even twin siblings, twin brothers, twin sisters. Literally come from the same egg and sperm, and it's one of the wonders of biology that they're still not alike. They share the same genetic pool. They come from the same genetic makeup. They're twins, for heaven's sake. Brothers, sisters, but they're still different. Everyone has their unique imprint. This is not a mistake. The Talmud says every person is obligated to say, the world was created for me. The Talmud says that Adam was created one human being. All the other animals were created in the plural. There were many animals, but Adam and Eve was one person. Why? To teach us that one person is the world. That every person has to say the world was created for me. We all come from Adam, who was one person, and that was the world. This is not an act of narcissism. The world was created for me, and you say the world was created for me, and your husband says the world was created for him. Great. So now we go to therapy, and you know that t-shirt that reads, I'm very easy to get along with once you learn to worship me? What's this weird statement? A person is supposed to say the world was created for me. The statement is a very profound one. It's basically saying that there's something I have to accomplish in this world that nobody before me and nobody after me will have the ability to accomplish. There's something at stake in your life and in your life and in your life and in my life and in our life for which the whole world waits. You are a shofar. You are a unique channel for God's light, for God's music, that channels it in a way that only you can channel it and nobody else can channel it. So the day you were born is the day that God said that the world is an incomplete place without your presence, your soul, your gift, your contribution, your life, your hope, your love, your wisdom, your philanthropy, your dedication, your commitment, your morality, your struggles, and your victory. No two shofars emit the same sound. I've tried it. You could set up 200 shofars and the same person blow in each and every one of them, but every one will emit a different sound. The same person, it's the same breath. But the shofar is different. God is the same. God is one. God's breath is one, but the shofar is different. Your unique DNA sequence, your unique biological makeup, your unique personality, your unique brain, your unique chemistry, your unique 80 trillion cells and 100 billion neurons make up the person that you are, your unique neshama, your unique breath and soul. In Hebrew, breath is neshima, which is neshama. Soul is unique, and in that sense, you resonate God's music in your own unique individual way. That's why we celebrate birthdays in Judaism. Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of humanity. A few days before Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of Bracha, as a preparation for Rosh Hashanah, which is the birthday of all humanity. Adam and Eve, the father and mother of all humanity. And when we celebrate that day, we're celebrating that each and every one of us has a mission to fulfill, has a voice to share, has a song to sing, and has light to spread. And because of your light, the whole world was created, because everybody needs it, everybody awaits it, everybody seeks it. One of the great musicians, composers, directors of the previous generation was the Italian maestro Arturo Toscanini. Arturo Toscanini had a photographic memory. He was an eccentric man, a brilliant composer and director. And the truth is, as Jews, we're very grateful to him, because Toscanini hated Mussolini, he hated Hitler, he despised fascism, and he is the one who arranged for the first Philharmonic orchestra to be created in Israel in the 1930s, and he managed to get many of the Jewish musicians out of Germany and Vienna, where their art became prohibited. No Jew was allowed to play in any of the operas, in any of the symphonies, and he got them all to Palestine, and he saved their lives. Toscanini later came to New York, had a biographer. And the biographer was studying his life in order to write a biography about this great Italian composer. And he once called Mr. Toscanini and he said, "Can I come over to your home this evening? I would like to interview you." So Arturo Toscanini says, "Tonight I'm busy because there is a symphony happening overseas, and they arranged that through shortwave radio, I'll be able to hear it. So I'm going to listen to the symphony tonight. I can't be interviewed." The biographer said, "Can I watch you listen to the symphony?" He said, "Yes, but you can't say a word." And he came over to the house and he got it through shortwave radio and he listened to the symphony. And at the end, he tells Toscanini, "That was amazing, no?" He said, wasn't so good. He says, "What happened?" He says, "They were supposed to have 15 violinists and they only had 14. He thought the guy is crazy. He's listening to a symphony over radio in the 1940s, and he knows that there was a violinist missing. He thought the guy is mamish meshiga, literally crazy. The next day he phoned the director and he asked him about it. And he said, "Yeah, one violinist didn't show up." And he went back to Toscanini and he said, "How did you know?" And he said, "That's the difference between you and me. You're just a regular spectator. You don't know the difference. But I wrote the music. I wrote the music, and I knew that this needs 15 violins. And when I heard them playing it, I knew that there's something missing." And he put it into the biography. And this is a metaphor, friends, for Rosh Hashanah. You see, I didn't write the music. I'm part of the audience. But God wrote the music. For him, every violinist is indispensable. Every single one of us represents an indispensable note in the cosmic symphony. Every single one of us has a unique song to play. Ashira Lashem b'chayoy, azam l'chai b'yoidi, says in Psalms. My life is a song, and everyone's life is a different song. And when one violin is missing, the author of the symphony, God, knows the difference. That's why the Talmud says every person is obligated to say, "For me, the world was created." There's something at stake in your life that the whole world needs. Now you might look at me and say, Rabbi YY, you're dreaming. The world doesn't need me. I'm just a simple, humble woman or man living in Milford, Massachusetts, minding my own business. But if you just take a look at events of the last few years, you'll see how sometimes what seems as the most insignificant creature, microorganism, can change the world in the negative. Do you think that one person can change the world in the positive? And that's why Judaism always emphasized the truth. To quote Maimonides, you should always look at life and the cosmos as a scale, a balanced scale. And I do one mitzvah and I tip the scale. One mitzvah. How did the First World War begin? First World War was called the Great War. It devastated Europe. It redrew the maps of Europe. And it was the catalyst for the Second World War, the worst calamity in human history. How did it begin? How did it begin? It began with a 19-year-old kid, Gabriela Princip, living in Sarajevo, who pulled the trigger on the Archduke, the future heir of the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and his wife. And that was the catalyst for World War I. One 19-year-old boy pulled the trigger, and it affected the lives of millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of people till today. If it's true in the negative, it's so true in the positive. And that's why the Talmud says every person has to look at themselves and say, for me, the world was created. I may be tipping that scale, not because we're arrogant and haughty and narcissistic, but because it's the truth that in every person's soul, there is so much atomic, nuclear, spiritual, divine energy. And when you become a chauffeur, when you become a channel for that music, when I get rid of my blockages, my traumas, when I don't focus on the externalities, but on the internal voice, the external buildings may be crumbling. And that's when you have to hold on to the internal structures and make sure they are solid and consolidated. Then our music comes out. It resonates far and wide, and it brings so much light and healing to the world. So I bless you, my dearest sisters and brothers in Milford. Privileged to be here with you, and I bless you that in honor of this new year, each and every single one of you, my dearest friends in Milford, each and every one of you should be able to be a chauffeur, should be able to be a channel for God's love, for God's music, for God's hope, for God's light. You should be that channel, that chauffeur. See your lives as indispensable notes in God's cosmic symphony. And this Rosh Hashanah, make sure to hear that shofar at Chabad of Milford, or wherever you'll hear the shofar. And when you hear that shofar, remember that that's a metaphor for you. You and I need to remove our blockages so that we can be a channel for God's infinity. You and I have the ability to be able to go into our inner structures and recreate and consolidate our inner foundations so they become more powerful than ever. And they don't crumble in the external mess of things, but you remain connected to something eternal that is for everlasting. Thank you very much, and Shana Tova, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Rabbi YY. I know I was standing in the back right now, so people can see me, I see them. But I want to take this opportunity to thank a few people that took part in tonight. Besides Bracha, I also want to thank Arlene and Andy for taking a big part in tonight's event, and everyone else who gave small and large donations. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much. We're going to take a few moments. If anybody has any questions, if you have one, you can type it on the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go off the mic. And if you have a question, feel free to ask.
Anybody has a question?
You can also put the question in chat for those who are on Zoom. There's a chat button. You can put the question there. Or you can unmute yourself. The chat says, happy birthday, bracha, for one of the people. Karen. Reading from the chat.
Oh, now we can hear.
Wait, does anybody have any questions here?
Hi.
No?
Here is one question. Should I start with you? Here's one question. Huh?
Question online, go ahead.
Should I start or you want to start? Me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
first of all, there's another message. Happy birthday, Bracha. We love you from 356. I assume that's an inside code. I don't know what 356 is. Okay, from 356, whoever that is, thank you very much. Okay, question. You spoke a lot about the fact that on the outside, everything could look perfect, and on the inside, we crumble. Here is the story of my life. On the outside, everybody thinks I'm happy, I'm successful, I'm put together, I have a great job, I have money, I'm affluent, I'm popular. On the inside, I am filled with fear and anxiety and depression. I hate myself, I hate my life. How do I begin healing? Wow. That's a loaded question. So this is actually the essence of the entire lecture. Such an important question. The first thing I would suggest to you is it is so important for you to be able to have this awareness. How on the outside, everything could look so good, and on the inside, it's all a lie. It's all one big fake lie. That's so important, that awareness, that honesty, number one. But let's get to the next step. Number two, you have to understand that your beauty, your truth is not something you have to acquire. It's essential. Each and every soul is a piece of God. So when you say inside, you're just a mess, the real you is not a mess. The real you is a channel for God's energy. That's not a mess. The core you is indestructible. The core you is invincible. At the core of yourself, there is so much happiness and so much potential and so much positivity and so much promise. The challenge is that you're disconnected from your real self. You don't know what your authentic self looks like. And probably the reason may be because from a very young age, you had to fake and become a different person. Maybe you felt you had to please your mother or your father or your school or your society or your community or your boss. So you became this figure that's not real. And you are suffering inside. And it's so important for you, but you can do it, to start peeling away the layers and getting back to your inner vulnerable self. Practically, I would suggest 4 things. First of all, you have to have a few people in your life with whom you're very honest. Whether it's a therapist, a mentor, a friend, a sibling, a confidant, a rabbi, a rebbitzin. 1, 2, 3, 4 people in your life with whom you're completely honest. No fake, no accolades, no fake compliments. You could just be real honest with them and express everything. Just express everything. That's so important. Number 1. Number 2, it is so important for you to start learning every day, at least 5 or 10 minutes, something of Torah, which speaks about who the person really is. There's a tremendous amount of Judaic literature, spiritual literature, that deals with who are we in our essence. What does your soul look like? You need to learn about your soul. It's so important. Every day, a few minutes to learn about your soul. That's the second thing. The third thing that is very important is to spend a few minutes a day in meditation and prayer. And simply reach out to God and say, help me discover my true self. And the last thing I would suggest to you is, it's important for you to be able to get somebody's help to explore what is going on inside of you and release some of it. There's reasons you do what you do. And if you can help yourself explore what's happening inside of you and release it, I believe slowly you will be able to reclaim your life. Next question. I want to be a conduit for God. I would love him to flow through me. But how do I have this awareness on a minute-to-minute basis when the blockages feel so real and so present? Wow. Great question. And the answer is, you're right. The blockages feel real and the blockages are very present. But you and I could make a choice every single day to either live with the blockages or to go to a place where we transcend the blockages. I can get stuck in those blockages and get angry and resentful and depressed and frustrated and annoyed, and full of anger at the world. I can go there. Or I could say every day, I'm going to choose today to be a conduit. And when the blockages come up, I become aware of them, but I quarantine them and I don't let them dictate my life. Those blockages only become blockages when you let them block you. When you don't let them block you, they're not blockages anymore. They become catalysts of awareness. So when you're experiencing blockages, talk to them and tell them, listen, you are here to remind me what I have to work on, but you're not here in order to stop the flow. You're not here to obstruct the flow. You're here to teach me what I have to work on. That's what you do. And when you have study every day, when you have prayer every day, when you do a mitzvah every day, you align yourself with that part of yourself. It becomes easier and easier. Practice makes perfect. There was a great golf player who was really exceptional at golf. And somebody once asked him, what makes you so good at golf? Why are you better than I? And he said, it's sheer luck. I simply have good luck. But the funny thing is, the more I practice, the more luck I have. So in all these things in life, we always need God's grace. But the more we practice, we create new neural pathways in our brain. And really things change. You'll see things change. You do something 60 times, it becomes part of your brain's neuro system. It really creates changes in the brain. Next question. Is somebody in my family that I haven't spoken to in many years. It breaks my heart. We got into a fight and we're not on speaking terms. What should I do? Good question. Well, I am a very, very big fan of not having anybody in the world that you don't speak to. If they don't want to speak to you, it's their problem. But you should be on speaking terms with everybody in the world. Well, you don't have to be on speaking terms with the spokesman of the Taliban if you don't want to, but let other people maybe do that. But you should be on speaking terms with everybody, especially family. It's very painful when family members don't talk to each other. We can disagree, but we have to talk to each other. We have to express ourselves to each other. I assume that something happened in the family. There was a fight, there was a disagreement. So this is what I would do. I would reach out to this person and say, let's meet for coffee. Meet for coffee. Don't just text. If you could, meet in Starbucks or meet somewhere else and say, listen, this is sitting on me. It's too long. I want to apologize to you. I may have done something wrong. I want to apologize to you. And even if you're not completely wrong, let's say they're wrong, so what? Let me tell you something. Listen to me. What's the difference between children and adults? Children don't hold resentments, right? Your child said, Mommy, I hate you. Tati, I hate you. 5 minutes later, they're your best friends. Adults keep grudges for years. Why? Aren't we more mature? The answer, said the Tzemach Tzedek, is this. Listen, children choose being happy over being right. Adults choose being right over being happy. Children would rather be wrong, but they're going to be happy. Adults, we say to ourselves, I'll be miserable, but I have to be right. I should apologize to you, and then you're going to think that you were right. So I'm going to be miserable till my last breath, but I'm going to be right. Friends, let me give you wise advice. Let's be like children. Choose to be happy. Don't choose to be right. It's a much better way to live. I'm not talking about a family member who may be dangerous. I'm not talking about a family member who's actively involved in abuse and you need healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are important. But to cut off somebody completely, not to speak to them, not to acknowledge their presence, the families don't have any relationships. I tell you that in 95, maybe 99% of the cases, we should choose better. but you choose better. When you're a channel, when you're a chauffeur, you're not afraid to say, I'm sorry. You're not afraid to be vulnerable. You don't have to be best friends with your sister. You don't have to be best friends with your brother-in-law. You don't have to be best friends with your uncle or with your aunt or with your nephew. You don't have to be best friends, but make amends. So New Year, this Rosh Hashanah, call them up, meet in Starbucks, and get back on speaking terms. That's my suggestion to you. Next question. Happy birthday, dear Bracha. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson. Your lessons vibrate with reality. I have a question regarding the sound of the shofar. How do I know I'm hearing the correct call? And how do I know when I'm doing enough to connect with Hashem and really becoming a channel? And how do I know it's the right music? Maybe it's the wrong music going through me. Great questions. Wow. Wonderful question. And the answer to that is, whenever you find yourself being a source of love, light, hope, positivity, morality, and goodness and kindness, you're being a channel for Hashem. So if you are a person and through you, what's happening is people are experiencing more depth, more meaning, more purpose, more love, more light, you're being a channel. You don't have to doubt it. If you have a doubt, it's good to have people whom you could consult with, people you trust, mentors and friends, who can help you deal with bias, confirmation bias, blind spots, mistakes. It's important to get feedback from somebody. How do I know I'm doing enough to connect with Hashem? The answer is the connection with Hashem is infinite. So the connection can always go deeper and deeper and deeper. Every day we want to grow a little more, and then you're good. You know, Hashem is infinite, so the growth is also infinite. It's endless. But every day we want to climb the ladder a little more. Okay, these are questions on chat. Does anybody want to unmute themselves? Does anybody want to ask in the room? That's also fine.
Yes, anybody?
It looks like we have a question here.
Okay.
Go ahead, sure.
But nobody here. Oh, man.
We're gonna try this.
Rabbi Mendy, you can also type it in the chat if you want. If you have a laptop, you can also type it in if it's easier. Or your wife can text it to me. She's been WhatsApping me. She WhatsApped me today, so she could WhatsApp it.
Do you hear me now?
I hear you with an echo. I hear you with an echo. Now I don't hear you.
Okay, try that.
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay. Kind of related to
Rabbi Jacobson, can you hear?
Yeah, a little muffled, but yeah.
kind of related to the last one. How do you figure out what your purpose or calling is? You hear that?
I missed a few words. Could you say it again? I'm sorry.
How do you figure out what your calling is?
Okay, we're chatting it.
How do you know what your calling is? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's a good question. How do you figure out what your calling is? Great. Okay. It's a great question. And I would answer three things. Number one, we always have to look at where we are in the world. What are our unique talents, circumstances, challenges, blessings, virtues, and opportunities? Because very often that could give us a hint to what our calling is. If there's certain experiences you went through or I went through, that's part of my calling. If there's certain traumas you went through, if there's certain challenges you have, gifts you have, talents, circumstances, where you live, what opportunities you have, what skill sets do you have, what type of people have you met in your life, et cetera, which family you come from. All these things are part of the unique, what you would call unique backdrop of every person's life. So it's from those things that I can often get closer to understand what God wants for me. That's number one. Number two, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs used to say this, where your passion meets a real need in the world, that's where your calling is. Sometimes you have a passion, but nobody needs it. Sometimes there's a need, but you have no passion for it or no ability for it. Where you have a passion and there's a need, that's the jackpot. Number three, and this is deep. Whenever you find in life something you know you should be doing, but you're having a very difficult time doing it. The odds are against you. The challenges are overwhelming, and you know you should do it. Probably that's part of your calling, and that's why there's so much resistance. Because the Kabbalah teaches that when we have a mission to accomplish, there's resistance. And the more important the mission is, the greater the resistance. So when you know there's something you should be doing in life, and you're working on it, and it's really hard, don't stop. Continue with more vigor, because that's where your mission lay. And finally, the fourth thing I would say is, don't ignore things that come your way. Meaning, we all have opportunities that God sends our way, but we're too busy or stressed or overwhelmed. Oh, I don't have time for this. When something comes your way, take a pause, take a deep breath, because there may be something special there for you. So don't neglect it. Remember always the words of Mordechai to Esther, Queen Esther, in the book of Esther. We celebrate Purim. She's in the palace, and he tells her, who knows if this is not the reason you have been appointed as a queen? You have reached royalty in order to save your people. What he was reminding her is, we don't always understand the journeys of our life, but when we're in a certain place, in a certain position, we have to always ask, what is the divine providence here? What is my calling here?
Anybody else? Nope. A quiet audience here. Rabbi Jacobson, do you hear me now?
I hear you very well.
So some
There's
people.
another question. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank a couple of people, which I said earlier, and I think only our audience here heard it.
Sure.
I want to thank a number of people for taking part: the Budmans, Hayuns, Zlotas, Spencers, the Gershas, the Tubmans, and especially Arlene Rosenberg and Andy Bond for taking such an important role in tonight's event. We thank you very much. Go ahead, take the question.
Should I take another one or?
In the audience, we don't have any, but if you have any online there, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So one more question. You speak a lot, you spoke about reconciliation with family. What happens if I have a very difficult parent and they drive me crazy and the pressure is ongoing and there's no boundaries and therefore I alienate them, but it doesn't feel right? What would you advise? It's a great question. Let me tell you something. Besides very few cases, to alienate completely one of your parents is not right, and it's not going to bring you happiness. I'm not talking about, God forbid, a father who raped his daughter. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about a mother who is simply a dangerous person. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about parents who have their difficulties, they have their traumas, they have their limitations, they could be difficult. So you need to learn how to create healthy boundaries so that your energy is not depleted. But the solution to cut your mother and father out of your life, I think you're going to regret it. Torah says, respect your father and mother. It's one of the 10 commandments. It doesn't mean agree with your father and mother. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean they're not perfect. But it means we respect our parents for one reason. They brought us to the world. They gave us the gift of life. And we respect them for that. You honor your father and mother because they are your link to God. They're your link to the Creator. Doesn't mean they're holy. Doesn't mean they're saintly. Doesn't mean they don't have issues. It doesn't mean you don't have difficulties with them. It means you don't have to alienate them completely. You need boundaries. You're allowed to tell, sometimes you have to know when to take the call, when not to take the call. You have to know what you could do, what you can't do. You have to know when you could show up, when you can show up, right? But to cut them completely out of your life and out of your children's life, I think you're going to regret it. Again, I'm not talking about a case where they are dangerous, dangerous people, or where there was real rape or molestation or abuse, and you simply, when you see your father, you're triggered and you go crazy. I'm not talking about that. Then you really need the help of a top expert to help you with that trauma. But I'm talking about in situations where your parents are very difficult. You know, they may have their own challenges and issues, but you know what? You also sometimes can have your challenges and issues. So what I would suggest to you is find a way to maintain good boundaries, but once a week you can call, twice a week you can call. You can visit for 10 minutes. You can visit for 40 minutes. You're not going to melt. Your kids can visit. You can go out to eat for an hour and a half. What's going to happen? You don't want to make regrets. You don't want to be full of regrets the day after. So I would say to you, again, I don't know the situation. If you're talking about real heavy duty abuse, and when you hear your father's name, you go crazy. You can't function. You have sleepless nights. It's a completely different situation. Then you need the help of a top expert in this field. I'm not a therapist. But if it's not that case, if it's not a severe situation of triggers that are destroying your life, I would say that alienating your parents from your life, it's not the Jewish thing to do. I would be very, very cautious before you make such a decision. I know people who made that decision, and when their parents died, they did not forgive themselves. Another question. Very, very interesting. Very good. Okay. How do I forgive people who have hurt me? This is a blockage in my life. People who have hurt me, how do I forgive them? It's a great question. It's a great question. The answer is as follows. If they are still harming you, then it's very hard to forgive. But if it's something from the past and they have asked you for forgiveness, meaning they apologized, it is well worth it to find within yourself the courage to forgive. The courage to forgive comes from three things. Number one, remembering that none of us are perfect. I also make mistakes. People have tools and they do things based on the tools they have. Our parents educated us with the tools they had. We educate our children with the tools that we have. Are we perfect? No, we all make mistakes. So we forgive. That's number one. Number two, forgiveness comes from the awareness that nobody can destroy your soul and your wholesomeness and your happiness. Nobody. You're a piece of God. You're a derivative of God's infinite energy. Nobody could destroy you. Number three, forgiveness comes from the fact that it's not good to live with resentment inside our brain. Somebody once said, resentment is like inhaling poison and hoping that your enemy will die. That's what resentment is. So if they apologize to you, try to find it in your heart to forgive. If they didn't apologize to you, it would be great to have a conversation with them and be open with them. Maybe they'll apologize. Maybe they won't. But if you can have an open conversation with them, it would be wonderful. It would really be wonderful, because to keep it in your heart is not good. If they still don't apologize, then it's your choice. If you can find it within yourself to forgive, it's a great blessing. But that's where forgiveness comes from. Remembering none of us are perfect and we all have limited tools. And just as they have their trauma, I have mine. Number two, your soul is always connected with the infinite. Number three, living with resentment is something that makes it hard, not only on the other person, but also on ourselves. We want to release things. So much easier, so much happier way to live. We hold on to grudges because it's a way of of control, of exacting punishment, of vengeance, of getting back at you. But think what's really your benefit, because you come first. So that's how I would respond to that.
Have any other questions there? I can't see this chat.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it
Thank
for
you very
now.
Rabbi Jacobson.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Rabbi Kievman, Rabbi Mendy. Thank you to Rebbetzin Kievman. Thank you to Bracha. Thank you to all the other sponsors. And thank you to the entire wonderful community. Thank you to all of those who are on Zoom. Thank you so much. And I want to wish you all Shana Tova, a blessed year, a good year, an amazing year, a happy year, a healthy year, a prosperous year, a year of love, light, healing, unity, and redemption. And thank you for being the pillars of the great Chabad community of Milford and all of the assistance that you give to the rabbi and the rebbetzin and their beautiful children and family, and being the pillars of this great community. I know that in the last 20 years, what the rabbi and the rebbetzin did is really amazing. They came into a community very different than the community they grew up in. And they built so many bridges between so many different types of people from different backgrounds and walks of life. It's incredible to see the bridges that were created, the sense of family and community. May they go from strength to strength, and may you go from strength to strength in building this community and turning it into an extraordinary space of love and oneness and family and spiritual and emotional growth. Thank you. Shalom.
Thank you very much. There's plenty of food left and desserts.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
L'chaim. Beautiful.
Actually, no. Let's see. You're still on. Hey, Ellie.
I want to thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobson. Can you hear me? Thank you. You should continue to maybe blessed to continue okay.
Amen. Thank you.
Be blessed to continue to inspire all of us every day. I enjoy so much listening to you, and thank you so much.
You. Thank you. For many more years.
Thank you.
In good health.
It was really beautiful. Thank you.
The work of Gilly House is amazing.
Thank you.
The work that you have been doing is really amazing.
It was the passion that came together. Yes.
Yeah, the passion and the need.
Can we send you a question offline sometime?
Sure, whenever you want.
Okay. Thank you.